TDs on your
Close to the food.
on your left.
Yeah,
hand side,
true.
and
Very
PNC
true.
is on your right.
Yeah.
Right in front of the PNC.
You know, it's hard.
Yeah, she's usually, I go over there, she's usually good. When you need it. Good done.
Yeah, I just need, I got a jacket yesterday, I need to get it, the sleeves are way small.
Yeah, I'll let you know, I mean, if you need to know, I'll let you know tomorrow, just because I go past there, just there's
No,
off
I'm
the top of my head.
gonna, you know what time we usually go into?
We're gonna do it. Like 7.
7.
Yeah, 7 in the morning.
That's like.
We get there open until 7.
7.
Pretty sure it's 7.
Yeah, I might run over there tonight.
Yeah.
Go on that
I mean, I'll text you.
trip next week.
If I go past there, I'll text you. But you know what you probably have to do though? You can't get there right off of 512 because it's on the other side.
Yeah.
So you have to go around, like come around and come, like on the other side. 'Cause it's like a little, I'm trying to look it up.
And it's like a cleaners too.
Yeah, it's a cleaner and she does tailoring right there. I mean, she's usually pretty good. Then there's another place. And I don't think she's as fast though. There's another place that's down on Broad Street, but she's not that fast.
I'm good with that because.
Right at the end of the year, there's a fact
Just
that
a party. Yes.
Let me see.
In here,
It could be.
there's the PNC bank.
Yes, that's probably it. Yep. Because it's literally before. Where's the Wegmans? I mean, where's the next
Right
stoplight?
here. So,
Where's the next stoplight?
so Wegmans is down here. So here's TD, here's PNC.
Like you could walk there from PNC. It's literally right
Yeah,
behind.
Wegmans is right there.
Yeah, so it's probably,
So
that's
is that
probably,
one?
yeah, it's probably that one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I would call them and just say, hey.
Oh, and I need you.
It says they close at 5.
It's not the same one. They're always open.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It might not be the same. I just figured like it's call.
Brian, how you
You
doing?
know what, when I go.
Hey, how are you?
past-
See you too. Going on? Good. Going all right?
Get the information and I'll text it to you.
So what's new over at your place?
They took delivery of the 650.
I know the name of it.
So,
Yeah.
I got this,
Not yet,
Uh-huh.
no.
You got the idea?
and, yep, right
Yeah,
there.
yep.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing you do is just the Eddie stuff.
Galley,
Right.
obviously, right?
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that.
You're talking about the,
And,
you're not talking about the waste, are you?
with
No,
the,
so when
how
you
do
go to the
they
whites.
divide the interior at all? Or is it all kind of? I mean,
Hey, good morning, Larry Himberger here.
Hi, Larry, how are you?
It's like a small.
I'm stuck in traffic, but I'm here.
they don't have it.
hard to get in
Oh, okay.
there.
Are you working your way over here?
No, they're still,
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm about a mile and a half out.
Might be, but then
Okay,
we have-
very good. We still have about 5 to 6 minutes left.
That's what it says on Google. It might not
Okay.
be 100% accurate, so.
That's all they do.
But the fact that you mentioned TD Bank and so
It's right there in front
Sure.
of you today.
Hey, Ryan, we're live.
Goodbye.
Cause I know the guy, he's always pretty good. What's it called, Spring?
Yeah. Yeah.
See?
And they go from here to,
Closes at
wherever in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the same one.
I'll check them out then.
Yeah, or just call him.
see you too.
Yeah, I'll give them a call.
How you doing? Good.
Thank you.
See you. Doing good. How you doing?
Call him, I'll ask him.
See ya.
Yeah, so you get the stuff. And then, you said, make sure you're able to make it to.
Yeah, well, that's-
Right, maybe not.
You just need a jacket?
Depending on the winds.
You don't really need the pants or anything. Okay. Is it a lot? Is it just like the sleeves or something?
Just the sleeves, I think. Everything else seems to go just fine. It's just the sleeves. Just pull something just right off the rack.
You should be, you should be.
You find
I was just calling. Tell him it's Todd Quan.
Todd sent me.
Yeah, no, you gotta say Quan, he messed it up. Because he owes me.
No, I'm
Because
trying
what happened
to,
is,
I don't
one
know.
time he gave me some money on
I know.
hunted me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person was going away. He literally was coming knock on my door.
last two meetings.
Sugar.
They just,
He wanted him to bring
They used to appoint people who's I don't care if I get Ross, as long as I do it.
She's the one that mostly operating.
I didn't like a couple of So I had to get something. We should see what they decide. If they decide to make it.
no, they're not shopping.
Definitely.
Eventually.
I see you're cleaning up that one here.
What's all the?
We're working on that.
Hey Frank, how are you? See you. So that means as long as
The 600, or the 600 will be really fascinating to see what people actually.
Yeah, I'm glad you cut it out there, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Hi. Good to see you. Elizabeth, yes. Nice to see you. I eat them once a year. Yeah, well. Everyone's
Up, everybody. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
What? I don't know if I want to see him and Peter or anything. That's more.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Friedberg.
Hi, it's Bob Friedberg. I'm on the line.
Hi, Mr. Friedberg. We have about 2 or 3 more minutes before we go, we start the meeting.
Okay, sure. I just wanted to let you know I was on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're burning through council, huh?
I know. Nice to meet you, Elizabeth Marca, and I work with the judge.
Doing good.
Many fewer souls. Yeah. That's I just do the front. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
We got the potato chips, thank
Yes, he's on already.
You're ready for the potato chips, so
He'll be in charge. They changed it up.
No, do it. Keep them potato chips.
Yeah,
And we
okay.
ice cream.
No, he changed it
Who eats
all up.
tortilla chips with their hamburger?
Some people like just chips and salsa. Alright, let's see who's here.
Well, I heard you were doing damage here, so.
How are you? Good, thanks.
We have 11.
Really? Okay.
I was here one meeting.
Our board meeting, yes, it was a nice meeting, we did very impressed.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the March meeting of the Authority of Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. And will you all please stand and pledge the flag? pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So that, would you please take the roll?
Sure. Brian Dames. Chuck Diacon.
He's here.
Mike Dowd.
Here.
Frank Facciano.
Here?
Glenn Geisinger. John Hayes.
Here.
Larry Hemberger.
Present.
Neil Copeland. Ed Lozano.
Here.
Jeff Matskin.
Here.
Glenn Riedman.
Present.
Ted Rosenberger. Michael Schwer.
Here.
Matt Turk. Christopher Worley.
Here.
And the judge is on the phone.
Very good. Again, thank you all for being here today. It's very close to being my last meeting as the chair of this authority, so I'm so glad to see a good crowd. I want to welcome Glenn Riedman, the latest member of the authority appointed by Northampton County. If you don't know Glenn, he's been a remarkably active person in the Lehigh Valley for a long time, former Northampton County executive. And Glenn, we're glad to have you. Glad to have you with us. In fact, you're the person who appointed me to the authority the first time. So it's your fault. Is there any public comment? Would anyone care to address the authority? If not, then let us move forward. The minutes of the February 27th meeting were distributed to you electronically. They were also, they were in your pad. So, do we have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Move to approve as presented.
You have a motion from John to approve them as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Eddie? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Thank you, Glenn. Matt, glad to have you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, glad to be here, sorry, Mike.
Glad you're here, period. Eddie, you want to give us a treasurer's report?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure to report another good month on behalf of the authority. As you can see up on the slide here, 2018 revenues were $2.2 million. Expenses were well managed again, 5% under budget at $1.6 million. Depreciation came in right in line, about $380,000. So our net income at the end of the day was $224,000 for the month of February, which is a reduction versus the period last year. And we'll have Todd just explain just the top line on that. But as you can see, significantly ahead of budget. So $225,000 of net income based on $2.2 million, obviously around a 10% net income. Very nice figure, ahead of plan. And Todd, if you can, just walk us through a little bit on the expenses that came in a little bit higher.
One of the things that we did, if you remember last year when we went through the budget, you could see that we kind of really go well the first 9 months of the year. And then toward the end, we have a lot of back-end expenses. So what we did this year is we included a lot of our back-end, the biggest one being our pension, throughout every single month. So that's about a $75,000 hit every single month. So for the month of February, that would actually, if we did it the way we did it in previous years, that would be an additional $75,000 of income. So what we're hoping is that, that kind of end of the year kind of lull will be taken care of throughout the year. It's a little bit more smoothing. And again, even though we're down versus last year, we're ahead of budget, as Eddie mentioned, and historically, we're doing very well because if you go back a few years back, we've done, the first couple of months of the year, we're usually around 400,000. We're ahead of that pace. So I think have good news for the first 2 months of this year.
Todd, was weather also a small factor in terms of the expense management?
Yes, we had, because that's always one of those variables that you have to kind of factor in. Our definition, as somebody told us, is different than the normal person's. So any kind of snow on the ground for us is an event. We had 11 snow events and 6 ice events this season, so that hit us kind of hard. So we have to spend more on materials, more on contractors, and again, we also have the multimodal area, which we have to also clean out now that we didn't have in previous years. So again, even with that, we still had a good month.
Great, great. Any questions on our monthly report here? Okay, so that if we can go to the year-to-date. And taking into consideration January as well, as you can see, we're at close to 4.5 million in revenue for the year-to-date February period, with expenses at 3.4 million, which continue to be very well managed. Very impressed how staff and the organization has managed expenses below budget, generally fairly consistent throughout the last couple of months and last year. Depreciation seems to come in right in line with what we're projecting. So at this point, 2 months out of the gate, 550,000 in net income. So a pretty strong performance relative to a few years back. And we're anticipating another strong year, barring any unforeseen issues. What we'll see in the next chart is this is driven by continued good, strong air traffic growth. So as you can see, Allegiant just continues to do extraordinarily well. So for the year-to-date period, 2018, they're up 30% in terms of air traffic. Now, if you recall last year, the legacy carriers, which are the remainder of the air traffic, were kind of static, if not slightly down. A little bit of a concern for us, because obviously we want to see all of our air carriers growing. And at this point, you can see that the legacy carriers are up 5.4% first 2 months out of the year. So not only does Allegiant continue to grow and even accelerating their growth, because I think on average, the past few months, we saw about 20% gains for Allegiant on a month-by-month basis. But now we're seeing, as you can see, 30% plus. So that's extraordinary good results by Allegiant. But the even better news is the legacy carriers are also showing growth. So this, as you know, not only translates to higher revenue from the air carriers, but there's tremendous flow-through that comes through from the parking lots, from car rentals, from services that, are revenue sources for the authority. So any questions on air traffic?
Just a comment and a question. The Allegiant traffic's good to see with the additional flights that they added. That's been a big boon. On the legacy carriers, is the increase, are they bringing in bigger aircraft? Is it higher load factors? What are we seeing?
We're seeing the same fleet mix of aircraft at this point, but we are seeing a little uptick on the load factor of those aircraft.
Okay.
Great. So why don't we continue? And Todd, do you want to just summarize this? This is a breakdown of what the net income increases are attributed to. So it's kind of broken down a little bit by bucket.
I mean, if you go back and really talk about what we've done for the first 2 months of the year, we had an increase in net income. Now, one of the things that drove our net income for the first 2 months, we sold the property, so we had easements in there. So that was $250-some thousand in that number year to date. So that's part of that number. But we've seen a decrease in our expenses because of delay in hiring, but some of it's timing. But again, some of this stuff is we try to be conservative in our budgeting and then manage from there. So that's kind of what's continued. Actually, the easements are mentioned at the last item. But again, we've had a good year. I mean, the main thing for what I look at is always parking, because that's our biggest revenue producer. And when that's up, that's good news for the airport.
Just came by, the parking lot's looking full today.
Yeah. And if you want to go in and pay parking just for the sake of paying for it, knock yourself out.
And Todd, while you're there, do you want to just summarize the cash flow?
Yeah, we had our cash flow. We tried to shrink it down. You have the full version actually in your packet in Novus. But as of March 1st, we had $10.8 million of cash, and then that flows through to, at the end of that period, 4.7. If you look historically, even, because one of the things I've tried to do is look at where we were in cash position. So our cash position as of March 1st is probably the best it's been in a long time. And I don't think it's probably you have to go back into like 2009, 2008 before we had a cash position that good as of March 1st. So even though I think it's always good to keep our expectations realistic, because we had a phenomenal year last year. That can't be our standard benchmark. Obviously, we want to continue to perform at a high level, but it's a little unfair to compare it to last year, because last year we had a lot of growth that was unexpected with our cargo and Allegiant. We're hoping that is going to maintain, but obviously the incremental adjustments have already been reflected in our budget. So again, it just shows our expenses are well managed. The one thing I did want to point out, if you're looking in the budget from last year, one of the things we anticipated doing in July was we have that bond fund, kind of, I call it the break the glass. We need money that we had from the bond fund years ago. We had assumed that we were going to take 1.3 million out of that to kind of meet some of our needs. At this point, we do not have that in our cash flow. So that's been taken out. So that money's still there, but we're not using it to meet our needs at this point. So it's just another kind of, just in case we have it there. I like to have a little money just in case, you know. The dean used to call it under the mattress. I like to keep it there for when it's a real emergency. Any other questions? Thank you.
I think that concludes the treasurer's report.
Can I have a motion to accept the treasury report as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? Mike? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Excellent. A couple of items under executive committee, and the first is, you know, we've been having some discussions with regard to bylaws and a couple of other issues that we asked the judge to address, and they are in your packet. And they deal with standards of ethical conduct and some other issues. Judge, I understand you're on the phone. Would you care to
Yes, sir, I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I can go into the amendments to the bylaws. These amendments will be voted on at the April meeting. We were required to give 30 days advance notice. We sent to the Board of Governors the proposed amendments to the bylaws in time to comply with that 30-day advance notice. So these bylaws will come up before the board at the April 24 meeting. The changes involved relate to making our bylaws, Article 18 of our bylaws, consistent with the Pennsylvania Public Officials and Employees Act. That act would allow the airport authority to contract with a business in which a board member is a principal, provided that it is an open and public process. And that means that the notice of the proposed contract must be advertised to the public, and there must be an opportunity for members of the public to be heard on the proposed contract before it is adopted by the Board of Governors. So what these changes do is bring our bylaws into consistency with the state statute. If the bylaws are approved at the April meeting, then it will be required that we advertise in advance any proposed contract with a member of the Board of Governors or an employee, and that there be an opportunity for the public to appear and be heard on them. Now, if the bylaws are approved in April, or at the April 24 meeting, then the vote on the proposed contract with Vertiview would occur in May, at the May meeting, and that is to give the board an opportunity to advertise to the public that it's going to be considered, and to give the public notice so that they can come in and be heard on it. One other matter, at the February 27 meeting, the Vertiview proposed ground lease was submitted for a vote, and it was approved. That vote was premature, given the fact that the bylaw amendment is scheduled for the April 24 meeting. So, as a result of that, I'm going to ask that the February 27 approval of the Vertiview ground lease be rescinded pending further consideration, as I've outlined it here. That is, after the April bylaw amendment, it would be on the May Board of Governors regular meeting, so that there'd be an opportunity for public scrutiny and comment. All right, that's the extent of it. Are there any questions that I can answer for anybody? There's no action on the bylaws today, but I am asking that the board pass a motion to rescind the approval of the Vertiview contract that was adopted at the February 27 meeting.
Do we have any questions? Then, Bob, thank you very much for your explanation. We will bring these forward at the April meeting, but I will entertain a motion to rescind the vote made at the February 27th meeting with regard to the Vertiview contract.
I wish to make that
We have a motion?
Or second it?
We have a second? Jeff? All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Then, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Again, thank you very much. Bob, we'll deal with that as we move forward in February. One of the things I did discuss with Chuck at one point and also with Tom is, I think it might be well for us as we move forward in next year, in the coming year, to begin looking perhaps at a bylaws review committee again, and go back and look at a couple of things, particularly as how we organize ourselves and committee structure and so on. So I think that's one thing that we'll be probably moving forward with in later 2018. John Hayes, you were good enough to chair the nominating committee, and I know you had lots of meetings and lots of phone calls and emails back and forth, and so would you share the report of the nominating committee?
I'd be happy to, Mike. I wanted to first thank a couple of people for joining me on the nominating committee and going through the process, Brian Dames and Ted Rosenberger. Mike also played a key role, and we had a lot of conversations with a number of board members regarding the process. And I think we've come up with a very good slate. Quick reminder, though, in terms of process, it's the responsibility of the nominating committee to present a slate of nominees for the officer positions and for Lehigh County appointee to exec and Northampton County appointee to exec. Action would not be taken on that slate until the April meeting. So we do have time to consider the slate as recommended by the nominating committee, as well as consider any other candidates that might come forward at that point. So after a lot of discussion and a lot of review and a lot of objections in some regard, I think we've got a pretty good slate. First, our nominee for chairman would be Chuck Dicont, vice chair Eddie Lozano, treasurer would be myself, Lehigh County appointee to exec would be Matt Turk, and Northampton County appointee to exec, our recommendation is Brian Dames. So I think it's a good slate, and the nominating committee recommends that in April, when we take action, that we would approve that slate.
All right. We'll consider that and defer action on that until the April meeting. Glenn, thank you for being here. I want to point out two things. John's not only chaired the nominating committee, but he's also assumed interim chair of the finance committee and done a remarkable job with us on that. I appreciate that. And Glenn stepped up and chaired the pension committee. So again, thank you for that. And one more meeting. So look at the pension committee report. Glenn, do you want to take a second before you take a breath?
I do apologize. Unfortunately, where I came from this morning, there was traffic between here and there that I didn't expect on 33, so I apologize. Very quickly, the pension committee, Mr. Chairman, met, and we had two presentations, one from Oakmont Capital Management and one from Mayor Barber. And both of those were in relation to the health of the pension program, as well as the long-term planning and the market outlook. Based on the report that we got back, both the union and non-union pensions are approximately 90 to 91% funded, which is very healthy for municipal pension funds. And as far as the investments, they are being reweighted appropriately as necessary to maintain the program that the Board of Directors, Board of Governors have put in place. So everything looks good. And to Todd's credit and to the airport's credit, they injected additional capital to bring that funding level up over this past year and are moving things forward in such a way that we put a 7.5% versus an 8% estimated return. And had we stuck with the 8%, we'd be 100% funded, which I think would be an unrealistic return number. But with the 7.5% number, we should be in excellent shape moving forward. So.
Excellent. Any questions of Tom?
Anybody have any more details that they want, other than I just ran up the steps feel?
One of the good things, your cardio always gets taken care of if you walk the steps.
I could lose 20 pounds, Mr. Chairman, but thank you.
But that's public record.
That's public record. It was public record before I walked in the door, John. Is that right?
Mike, you're familiar with public pension funds and solar. Any comments or? All right. Glenn, thank you very much for stepping up and doing that. Ira, you were there too. Any comments?
No, Glenn hit them all.
All right. Very good. Then let's move on to the director's report. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lozano did mention our February traffic up a little over 15%. Again, another great month of passenger activity at the airport. We also, in other news, we did complete our TSA pre-check enrollment center. Our latest pre-check enrollment center was our 5th, and we added another 760 individuals through that process, and that takes us to a little over 6,400 persons that have gone through our enrollment centers here, so it's been very successful. During March 12th through the 14th, myself and Ryan Meyer were at the annual airports conference out in Hershey, and that's not where the peeps came from. I'll address that in a second. But it was a good opportunity to meet with federal and state airport officials, and so we had an opportunity to get some presentations there and even face-to-face time with some of those folks. And it's always important when we're talking about projects and funding, so it was actually a very good conference. Some good meetings there. In front of us, we have our peeps. Just Warren was here yesterday. We did peeps in the terminal, and the peep mascot was here, which I'm not sure how they see out of that, but they walked around the terminal and handed out some peeps for us, and that was, I think, a great thing. Currently, we're undergoing our annual airport certification safety inspection. Our inspectors from the FAA are here from the eastern region of out in Jamaica, New York, and they're with us last night, today, and tomorrow, completing that annual inspection. At this point, things are moving forward well. And we're working on preparation for our Wings for All event with the ARC of Lehigh Northampton counties. That'll be on Saturday, May 5th. So we continue to have open registration for that with the ARC, and looking forward to partnering with them. Last bit of news, we all heard about the $1.3 trillion omnibus package that was approved and signed on Friday. That adds another $1 billion to the AIP fund, our Airport Improvement Program fund, so up from 3.35 to 4.35. So, and within that legislation, we also see that small airports get a little bit of a different metric in terms of their evaluation for funding. So we're excited to see some of those measures passed as part of that. So, and that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just a comment. Great news about the increased travel and flights, but really great job getting the word out as well.
Super.
Good stories on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This goes back to meetings we used to have a few years ago. We were done in 45 minutes. Any new business? Then, do we have a need for an executive session in anticipation?
I would like to have an executive session to discuss litigation. Before I do that, however, I want to remind the members of the Board of Governors that the Statement of Financial Interest forms for covering the year 2017 must be filed by May 1, must be turned into to Savette by May 1. The Solicitor's Office is prepared to assist you with any questions that you have about filling out the form, but I do want to remind you that we're coming up rapidly to the deadline, May 1.
The document is available online, so
It's on Novus.
All right. Thank you, sir. Then, following up on the...
I request an executive session to discuss litigation involving the authority and airport ventures.
I have a motion for an executive session. Be a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Indeed, let us move and adjourn into executive session for the purpose outlined by the judge.
Yeah, maybe we ought to put the paper that we're losing money.
We're just being good partners.
Welcome back, everyone.
Rockefeller, I guess.
Do you want to summarize the purpose for our executive session for us?
To discuss a pending litigation matter and whether or not an appeal should be taken.
And at this point, we'll ask for a motion to authorize our solicitor to appeal the decision of Judge Verricchio regarding fees for the airport ventures. All
I would strongly make that motion.
right.
I'll second.
Michael, all right, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those, any negative, like sign? Is there any other business that we ought to be addressing today? Then I'll say my next to last session has been a brief one, but thank you all very much. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent, thank you.